Hello everyone, this is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with another exciting video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Ivan the Unstoppable's video, How Strong is Static? Virgil, Ovid, Hawkins, DC Comics Milestone Comics video. Shout out to Ivan the Unstoppable. Essentially what I did is I already watched through his whole video, so this video isn't going to be me watching his video and actively reacting to his video as it plays. I already watched his video twice. I took some notes on some of the different feats that he provided for static, and I'm going to share those notes with you guys. So this is going to be mainly me essentially trying to power scale static through the feats that are shown in Ivan the Unstoppable's video. I really enjoyed his video, but I noticed that he didn't specifically do stuff like, say, static's attack potency is this, static's durability is this. He does call out static speed specifically, which I really appreciate, but I wanted to just go through some basic stats that you would probably want to use when power scaling static. That he essentially alludes to by showing you the feat of, but I wanted to try and quantify some of that stuff for you guys. So without further ado, let's go over my notes. Real quick before we start, shout out to Ivan the Unstoppable. If you guys want to just watch his original video, you guys definitely can do so by jumping in the description. Okay, so he shows that static can reattach his limbs automatically thanks to his energy being physiology, which means that he has regenerative durability. The reason why I'm using the terminology regenerative durability is because regenerative is actually one of the durability categories on the Marvel power grid. So if you're trying to scale static using the Marvel power grid, you would put him as regenerative because that's what he does. Next up, static can use his electricity to manipulate his enemies on a subatomic scale in order to do things like scatter away all the electrons around an enemy's body so that they rush back to them and electrocute them. I thought this was kind of interesting when I saw it. I didn't know that was something that he could do. I have a scaling of that particular feat, but I do think it's an interesting hacks ability. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of that particular ability in its application and what it would do to some of the heavy hitters of the DC and Marvel universe. Because I feel like that would be different depending on who you targeted with the ability. But anyways, continuing on. Static has been shown to be able to use electrical current to separate water into hydrogen and oxygen in order to create a massive explosion, which he survived point blank after using this on a massive tidal wave that threatened a city. So I don't know how to properly scale this, but imagine a tidal wave with enough destructive force to destroy a city being turned into a hydrogen bomb and then exploding in your face, and you survive it. And that's kind of what happened. If a small city takes 1 megaton of force to destroy, and that's lowballing it, assuming that it's a small city, and static was able to destroy a city-destroying tidal wave with a single attack, then that could scale static up to small city level in terms of attack potency and destructive capacity. Not to mention that he survived said city-wrecking tidal wave exploding in his face hydrogen bomb style. So I feel like it definitely could lend toward his attack potency and destructive capacity, and I can defend that. So attack potency is supposed to be the highest level of enemy that you can harm. So let's say that someone like Molecule Man is universe level, he could destroy a universe. If you can harm Molecule Man, it means that your attack potency is universe level. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can destroy a universe, it just means that you can harm someone who can destroy a universe. Now, while this scaling isn't using another character, we're just using a natural force that could kind of do the same thing. So this tidal wave, while it may not be a sentient being, it had the capacity to destroy a city. Static, when he's stopping it, is talking about how he's saving the city from the tidal wave. So if this is a small city destroying tidal wave or whatever, by him being able to, zap it and blow it up, essentially getting rid of this city destroying thing, I think that shows that his attack potency scales to that of a city. And I can back it up a little bit more. So unless explicitly stated otherwise, a lot of power scalers like to say that character durability is comparable to attack potency, meaning if you can take a hit from a city level entity, you likely can dish out a hit to a city level entity. So not only does he get rid of that tidal wave by blowing it up, but he also survives the explosion. Like he's able to like tank getting hit by that exploding tidal wave. So if you don't consider the like attack itself to be like a city level thing, or at least you don't think it's good enough evidence on its own, then I think the durability of him surviving the explosion of like a city destroying tidal wave helps to add some more credence to the idea that his attack potency can hit the level of like city level. His destructive capacity also I think should rank that high. I mean, I don't know. That one's a little bit arguable. Being able to destroy something that can destroy a city doesn't necessarily mean that you can destroy a city. So I could definitely understand if you argued that his destructive capacity wasn't at the level of the city. I have another feat that I think would be better for measuring destructive capacity, which we're going to go over right now. Static once absorbed 94 megawatts of power from a city power station and released it as an alpha ray burst attack. 1 megawatt equals, I think that's 1 million joules per second. It's a ridiculously high number. One thing that I have an issue with is trying to read numbers without commas, like really long numbers. I kind of need the commas to break it down. Yes, so 1 megawatt equals 1 million joules per second. 10 megawatts equals, I'm imagining it's just going to say 10 million joules per second. You just multiply it by 10. 94 megawatts equals 94 million joules per second. 94 million joules is equal to 94,000 kilojoules. There are 4,184,000 kilojoules in a ton. So 94,000 kilojoules is equal to 0.0224 tons. This puts his alpha ray burst feat that we were talking about, in case you got lost in the numbers, into small building level. That's enough energy in order to destroy a small building. So if you don't think him destroying the tidal wave gives him the destructive capacity of like a small city, I definitely understand that. Like I could see that not being a good measure, but I do think this is a good measure of his destructive capacity. He should be at the very least able to destroy a small building with one of his lightning attacks. And Ivan the Unstoppable in his video also says that static is small building level. I feel like this particular feat that he mentioned in the video helps highlight that. He didn't like quantify and break down the feat to try and figure out how many tons of force the alpha ray burst was. So I decided to do that on my own time to try and like figure out like the number. Which kind of creates like an interesting scenario where I feel like you could probably argue that his attack potency is like city level, like he can hurt a city level like entity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that his destructive capacity is city level. So I think that's fairly interesting. It's also interesting because this particular feat is static after having absorbed a large amount of energy, meaning that base static may not necessarily be able to do this like alpha ray burst. We don't know if he needed to absorb the power from the power station to do it, but we do know that he did absorb the power from the power station to do it. So that's kind of interesting as well. But it's definitely something that he's capable of, and as long as he's fighting within a city, it seems like this is something that he should be able to do. Let's see. He is incredibly adept at hacking, strategizing, and advanced engineering. I would argue that due to his young age and background, that a lot of his intelligence is gifted rather than learned. So gifted is a stat on the Marvel Power Grid for intelligence, again, trying to scale to that Marvel Power Grid specifically. And learned, I feel like, is where a lot of people rank. You know, learned just means that you're like educated, you went to school. It's like a step above like normal intelligence. I believe gifted is a step above that, saying like, you know, there's a difference between kind of being like a prodigy almost, like you just seem to be really good at the thing, versus learning to get to that level. And I would argue that static has gifted level intelligence. Some of the feats that are mentioned in Ivan's video involve him casually building robots or doodling up and then engineering new suits for like Kid Flash and stuff like that. He very casually does these like big brain feats. You could try and argue for higher than gifted. I'm not necessarily sure if that's necessary, and I don't necessarily know how you would defend it, but I could see it, I guess. Like if you wanted to say that Static was like a genius, I wouldn't put it past you. I still think he's still probably in the level of like gifted, personally. But let me know in the comment section below whether or not you disagree, if you feel like he's genius level intelligence or not. Static is definitely an experienced fighter, but I don't know if he's ever actually mastered any martial arts. And this is me referring to the Marvel Power Grid way of scaling fighting skill. So experienced, I believe, is the step right before you master like one martial art kind of thing. But let me know in the comment section below again if Static has ever mastered a specific martial art before. I could be wrong. By the way, in case you guys didn't watch Ivan the Unstoppables video and you're wondering why I'm not bringing up like DC animated universe feats, Ivan the Unstoppable was only using comic book Static feats within his video, so I'm only referring to comic book Static feats, specifically the ones that he highlighted in his video. Next up, due to being able to overwhelm Ravager when going all out in terms of speed, he is scaled at being he scaled at being massively hypersonic plus in speed, which is the speed tier right before sub-relativistic, which is insane. So this is a feat that actually was quantified in Ivan the Unstoppable's video, but he didn't tell you what speed tier it falls into. He gave you like the very specific number, like what Static's like speed would be for him to be able to keep up with Ravager, but he doesn't actually tell you like what the speed tier is. So I took the number that he gave, I had to convert it into another number, and then using that number, I checked the Versus Battle wiki to try and figure out what speed tier he would fall into. But it seems like he's massively hypersonic plus. That is, if his scaling against Ravager was accurate. He does say some interesting things about Ravager in that video, like the idea that she is like precognitive and stuff like that, and that he's somehow fast enough to keep up with her even though she should know the future and like what he's gonna do. So let me know in the comment section below if Ravager is precognitive or not. Again, as someone just watching the video, it's not like I can easily like double check that. He shows a scan where he's like, and this scan clearly shows that Ravager is precognitive, and I paused the video, but I didn't feel like the scan really portrayed what he said. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comment section below. So now that we've gone over all that, let me give you a quick review of all the things that we discussed, pretty much like a quick summary. So for his attack potency, I would say that Static is at small city level, specifically because he stopped a city-threatening tidal wave with a single attack, and tanked said tidal wave exploding in his face when he separated the hydrogen and oxygen inside of it, essentially tanking a hydrogen bomb-style explosion to the face. Not like a nuclear hydrogen bomb kind of explosion, specifically just the separation of like oxygen and hydrogen kind of explosion, like a Hindenburg kind of explosion. I keep calling it a hydrogen bomb, but it's more like just a hydrogen explosion in general. Next up, his destructive capacity. I would probably safely put him at small building level. It's kind of a stretch to try and say that he's small city level, I would say, specifically because he did the alpha ray burst feat that was equal to 94 megawatts using energy that was absorbed from the city power station. Next up for his durability, I would say that he has regenerative durability. That's using the Marvel Power Grid standard. Because his energy physiology allows him to automatically reattach severed limbs. Also, just a particularly like strong durability feat, he survived a point-blank like hydrogen explosion to the face when he separated the hydrogen and oxygen in the city-threatening tidal wave. I still think that's a pretty cool feat. I don't really know how to quantify how much force he would have been hit with. If you guys happen to know how to calculate the force of a hydrogen explosion, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, like, what kind of forces was he dealing with, like, when it blew up in his face like that. Next up, we got intelligence. He, I would say, is at a gifted level of intelligence. He's incredibly adept at hacking, strategizing, and advanced engineering. Next up, speed. So for speed, based on the number that Ivan gave, he ranks at massively hypersonic plus, meaning he can overwhelm characters like Ravager, who are precognitive super soldiers. Please, someone double check that Ravager thing. I'm like, is she really precognitive? I've never heard that. And maybe I just don't know a lot about Ravager. I really don't. But that's why I'm asking for somebody to look that up. That sounds so weird. I've never heard that. But maybe it's true. It's probably true. Anyways, energy projection. This is a thing that the Marvel Power Grid specifically likes to highlight. I ranked him as having long range and long duration electromagnetic energy projection. That's kind of a duh thing, but I mean, it's a part of the Marvel Power Grid. You guys may be wondering, why didn't I cover like strength stuff, like lifting strength and striking strength? The feats that he went over didn't really seem like they were heavily based on Static's like physical capabilities, and Static doesn't really seem like the character who goes around just punching people in the face. He does have some hand-to-hand combat experience. Like I said, he's an experienced fighter, but I don't think he's necessarily hitting you with these crazy punches. If I'm wrong, definitely let me know in the comment section below. And when it comes to him lifting stuff, he did show some feats of Static lifting things with his electricity. I know in the animated series, I know we're not talking about the animated series, we've seen him like lift cars and stuff with his electricity. But when talking about lifting strength, do they mean lifting strength with hacks or without hacks? Like, because I don't know if you would even use him picking up like cars or picking up large metal objects with his electricity as like his lifting strength or not. Let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, that was just a quick review over everything we discussed. Definitely let me know, how powerful did you think Static Shock was before you watched this video, and how powerful do you think Static Shock is now that you have seen this video? If you guys want more information on each of the individual feats, including the mini that I didn't cover in this video, definitely go check out Ivan the Unstoppable's video. I'll have a link to it in the description box below. Did you watch Ivan the Unstoppable's video before you checked out this one? Let me know. Let me know like who's coming from his video and like who learned about his video through this. Anyways, thank you all once again for watching. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jeff like the one only, logging out. Peace, guys. Check it about.